Okay, shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, Toda Rabah. We are now beginning our Niddah mood. Thank you all for your patience. We are starting a little later than scheduled, but Baruch Hashem, we are all here. So again, thank you for your patience. We won't lose any more time. We'll dive right in, and maybe we'll try to make it a bit concise today since we're starting so much later than usual. So we are, as always, in our weekly limud for Talmud Yerushalmi, Masechet Niddah, and there were some thoughts from the earlier limud, the Parsha Shavua of Tazria-Metzora, that I felt very apt and apropos for this Niddah limud. So we will try to integrate the two and connect some points of Niddah to the weekly Parsha. So last week we were in chapter 1, still in chapter 1, Halakha 5. And if you recall, we spoke about the idea of the cycle of the virgin who would be found to have a fixed cycle after 3 periods, and even the Zakena, the elder woman, the mature woman, who even if she had her normal monthly flow interrupted and she was not receiving her cycle, that after 3 30-day periods of resuming her bleeding, she would then be regarded as having a fixed cycle. And one of the interesting points that came out in last week's halakha was the concept of the stain, the ketamim. For some people, that may have sounded like something else, but the ketam, a stain, ketamim, are the plural stains. So we know that blood, the dam tahor, or the pure blood or the unclean blood, we know that blood overall is a signifier of judgment, dinim. We know that anywhere we see women and types of women delineated, we are looking at a spectrum of manifestations of Malkut, the divine feminine, Shekinah, in the stages of rectification through reunification through the rectified Ziarampin, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Vav, reunited with the He. So there's a mutual and a reciprocal rectification of both masculine and feminine vessels in the lower Sefirot, the 7 Sefirot, as always reminding us of the death of the 7 kings. That is the grandiose operation of rectification throughout the cosmos. Everything is a reflection of this great pre-primordial cosmic act. So through our manifestation, our incarnations in this physical realm, every mitzvah, every thought, deed, and action we carry out with kavanot, with intention, is for that rectification and the unification of divine masculine and feminine. For the unification of divine masculine and feminine is the unification of all. The unification of choshech and or, light and dark, front and back, up and down, high and low, black and white, to the end result of that ultimate limitlessness that we call Ein Sof. That is beyond definition, beyond delineation, beyond distinction, and beyond all separation, beyond duality, transcending duality, polarity, and plurality. So this very world, the manifestation of this physical world, as the physicality of this world in its denseness, its materiality, is the process through Tzimtzum of separation and withdrawal for the sake of reunification. Even the galut, even the exile, is a necessary separation to arouse that desire, described as the feminine waters, Ma'in Nugvin, to arouse that desire to ascend to holiness as wholeness, because peace is wholeness, oneness. And this is the Shema, that echad that we evoke daily in and as ourselves, the rectification, the reunification of the name Yod-He Vav-He, the Abba, the Ima, the Ziarampin, the Nukva, all of the Olamot, the Sephirot, as the unification of all of Israel, us as individuals and collective. And even more than a nationhood, a statehood, even more than an ancestral or genetic identity, Israel as the soul state, the state of consciousness that we call Adam HaYisraeli, or the level of soul called Yekide Segula, Yekida, the oneness mindset to which one ascends in that Torah Aleph, the Torah Emet. So when we see the types of women delineated in this Mishnah, in these Mishnahot, the virgin, the elder woman, the breastfeeding woman, the pregnant woman, we know these are different manifestations of divine femininity as Shekinah in her different phases of rectification. And even like the moon, of which our cycle is a mirror, literally the cycles of the months, the moons, the feasts, the Shabbats. Shabbat as the ultimate rectification and restoration, glory of the Shekinah. Yes, Nasika Bina in the chat. You can think of it as the stages of the butterfly. Absolutely. So remember, the Mishnah is not just a bunch of boring legalistic language regarding everyday actions. It is deeply encoded. And where you see any type of woman described, we know that we are looking at an array of cosmic archetypes. Just one second, someone's coming into the room. Oh, yes. Shalom, shalom. Where are my manners? Shalom, shalom. Rabbinit Yochevet. Shalom, shalom, Nasika Bina. Shalom, shalom. Toda Rabbah for joining us. And shalom, shalom to all who are watching the stream. So where I wanted to connect, and I won't take up too much of your time today because it's the evening time. We got families to get to, dinner to eat. But I did want to connect Niddah with our weekly Parsha while it is timely. So in Parsha Tazria-Metzora, we saw in our limud earlier today that Lashon Hara and sexual immorality, sexual impropriety, is linked to the manifestation of Zara'at, the leprosy. We also see these particular manifestations as forms of arrogance and anger, typified by the violation of boundaries. We talked about the idea of the separation, the dehumanization, the objectification, because to speak is so criminal because it is a blemish in the collective unification of each soul one to the other. And we remember from even our Sha'ar HaPesukim study that every soul comes from the roots of those sparks from Adam HaRishon. So we all come from the same place, and we all in that unity mindset should look at each other as one. There are no others in Torah Emet, in the Torah Aleph. There are no others when we see ourselves as unified, embodying the limitlessness of Ein Sof. The purpose of creation is the emulation of the Creator, the ultimate Creator, beyond any distinctions or delineations, beyond any separation of pure and impure, good and evil, front, back, left, right, up, down, dark, light, black, white, masculine, feminine, high and low. All of these are separations. All of these are illusions. And these illusions came about through the shattering of the vessels. Sheridat Hakeli, from the death of the 7 kings. And why the death of the 7 kings? Why are the 7 kings, even the 7 days of the week, the planetary influences of the 7 days of the week, why do they need to be repaired? Because of the imbalance. And again, it's the 8th king, like the 8th day, that transcends that duality through unification with his wife, Mehetavel, symbolizing that oneness of masculine and feminine, where all boundaries are dissolved. But in the illusion of ego, the egoic illusion of duality, plurality, polarity, you automatically see others. You make others. And this leads to that imbalance that becomes gaba'ah, that arrogance, giving one the presumption, the entitlement to violate boundaries, violate bodies, seeing someone as different than you, seeing someone beneath you, speaking harmfully about them in ways you wouldn't want someone to speak about yourself. Sexual immorality, sexual impropriety, the violation of bodies, the skin, the soul. We spoke earlier in the Limud today about the skin as the external expression of the soul. It's another layer of the soul, the garment, the levush of the soul. And so damage in that flow of Shefa, the transmission of Or Ein Sof as divine energy and divine consciousness, especially in Sefira Yesod, affects the flow of blessing that can come through Da'at, the consciousness, the intelligence applied through speech that manifests and externalizes. So when there is internal misalignment and disharmony, even what we would understand as cognitive dissonance, that misalignment, that disorder, that dis-ease and imbalance becomes visible on the external expression of the soul, which is the skin. So the body becomes the stage, in a sense, upon which spiritual harmonization or lack thereof, 'thereof' 'plays out. So we know that in indigenous cultures, we know that speech is power. In African spirituality, in Yoruba cosmology in particular, there is the phenomenon of Ashe, which some can think of as synonymous to what we refer to as the Or Ein Sof, the light of Ein Sof, the vital force, the animating energy, the spark that animates all of creation. So this Ashe is a power that carried through speech is called Ofo Ashe. And just as the sages say that of 10 portions of speech, 9 were given to women. Interestingly enough, corresponding to the 9 muses of creativity in Greek mythology, and even the 9 mothers that are called the Norns, the mothers of fate in Nordic cosmology, and even the 9 elders of the night, the council of elders known as Ajeyami, the mothers that manifest as birds. There's a deep connection between birds and speech from the Ari Hakadosh, even in understanding the incident with Bilam. But that's another story. We won't digress into that. But Ofo Ashe, the power of manifestation through words, is highly sacred. And the misuse of it through Lashon Hara, gossip, cursing, profanity, vulgarity, insults, degrading someone through words, even manipulation through language. This disrupts the cosmic balance of that interconnectedness, that unity. And it manifests physically. So another bridge we spoke of earlier about the connection between Yesod and Pei, the mouth. Not only in Gematria, Yesod is equal numerically to Pei. This shows us the link between Yesod below and Yesod above. The two portals, the two gateways of creation and manifestation through speech and through transmission of seed. We saw earlier, especially in this particular parsha, Tazria, it starts off with the affirmation that woman does indeed have seeds, life force transmission, life force energy, creative energy, the spark that brings life into being, creating a vessel. So reproductive energy, creative energy, this life force vitality is sacred, and it's tied to the continuation of lineage and legacy through ancestors, continually returned cyclically as Hagyogulim, the cycles of reincarnation. And violations of this transmission through, again, we know lineage and legacy, reputation even of the ancestors, past, present, and future. Your reputation is your children's reputation. Your reputation is your ancestors' reputation. We are all interconnected, past, present, and future, in divine simultaneity. So any rupture in that, any blemish of that, damage of that, violation of that through speech or action that damages that damages reputation through Lashon Hara, or sexual impropriety, whether adultery or sexual exploitation, the transgression of cultural taboos, taboos that are specific to your bloodline, your family, your tribe. All of these are ways that the ancestral alignment is disturbed and disrupted. So skin represents boundaries between worlds, between states of being. Skin becomes that which houses our vital force, our sparks, in order to walk through this physical incarnation. And we spoke about earlier how skin is a manifestation of Malkut. It is literally the kingdom that we dwell in. We dwell inside our skin, and we seek to master and rule over our flesh in divine rulership, divine authority, knowing that our skin houses the limbs and sinews tied to the 613 mitzvot. Blemishes and disruptions in the spirituality behind our thoughts, deeds, and intentions manifest as visible afflictions and skin disorders. So when one is out of alignment, alignment being that embodiment of oneness consciousness, unity consciousness, then that boundary becomes unstable. So we would connect this to the stains of the garment, the kitam, as your clothing, cloth, is another extension, another levush, another garment for your soul, an extension of the soul. Just like we said, in our culture, diasporic culture, African culture, indigenous American culture, all around the diaspora, we were always taught not to wear other people's clothes, not to sleep in other people's beds, not to let everybody in and out your house. Your house, your bedroom, your clothes, they're all external levels or extensions of your soul. And so we see the zara'at, the leprosy, appearing in this parsha on not only the flesh, but garments and even walls. When evil speech is in the house, permeating the environment, the atmosphere, you see manifestations of stains on the walls, even persistent stains on garments that seem to come out of nowhere, blemishes on the flesh. We see more and more that we collectively have departed from our ancestral ways, our ancestral moral foundations and ethical ideals. We see more and more these correlations between increased instances of things like eczema, psoriasis, skin disorders, sexual diseases that manifest on the skin through lesions, warts, HSV. I think statistically it said something around 70 to 90%, depending on what markers you're looking at, of the average society right now in the United States, I don't know about anywhere else, is infected with some form of HSV, herpes, even with different names, including things like Epstein-Barr virus, different diagnoses of autoimmune disorders that researchers are now equating to different forms of herpes virus affecting the skin, affecting the reproductive organs, sores in the mouth, and we see the increased incidence in these manifestations of disease and disorder, the more we abandon our ancestral ways, the more we blemish the reputations of our ancestors and even our children to be, whether you have children or not. We have to always be reminded of the divine simultaneity of our existence. We do not just exist for us as us right now. We are our children. We are our ancestors simultaneously. All of the actions continue this ripple effect, this butterfly effect, for those who saw the movie. So this manifestation of the Zara'at on the flesh, the garments, and the walls is an interesting parallel to, in this Mishnah Niddah, the ketamim, the blood stains on the garment. Annie, are you okay? So the Zara'at moves outward across layers of reality in this ripple effect, affecting not only the body, one's body, but the body as the collective. We know blood manifests dinim inside the body. The ketamim, the stains on the garment, represent the dinim, the judgment that is passed to the external realm, the externalization, the external levels of the soul. One's garment and one's home environment, which themselves extend symbolically to your garment as your mantle, even your socially ascribed position. You know, when we even say in everyday language, like, we put on the role that society gave to us. We put it on like a garment. We put on different titles in society, in the community in which we operate. These are our garments. Garments even of our reputation, and with it our name and our ancestors' name and lineage and legacy. It's a garment. Your reputation is that garment. And your home is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the larger community. So when you start to see these stains and blemishes in the home, on the garments, on your skin, you can understand that butterfly effect, that ripple effect to the larger body as a collective, the larger community, and the larger collective memory, collective consciousness, the ancestral legacy. And nothing stays hidden and internal. Everything concealed is inevitably revealed. This is why the inner flow of judgment, even the blood that is hidden inside, becomes the traces that are visible outside. And this goes into why what the woman sits on and lays on and touches then becomes a transmitter of that tumah. Because it is the dinim that is then passed and extended to an external space. All right. Baruch Hashem. Yes. Toda Rabbah. Koti Shul Rabbah. Thank you for joining. All righty. We'll jump right back in. We wanted to make it a little short today because we are much later than our original schedule. Yes. So we know in our culture, one of the ways to place an affliction on someone is through the tongue. In Hoodoo language, you could say, you cross somebody through words, negative speech, the evil tongue and the evil eye. It's not always, and it's hardly about the external theatrics of candles and oils and all these, these trappings, all these tools. It's the inner intention, the inner thoughts, the thoughts that inform that evil eye, the thoughts that inform those evil words to speak one's desire on someone. Again, objectifying someone because you have othered them and you cross them, putting sickness and illness and misfortune on someone through speech. And in the same hand, someone evokes and invokes those spiritual disorders upon themselves through evil speech and evil eye, because it's a manifestation of that imbalance, that othering. So gossip, lashon hara, harmful speech, opens the door for all manner of affliction and misfortune. And that's the strongest work that can be put on a person. So when we speak of Niddah, there's this axis between life, death, rebirth, birth, and sexuality, intimacy, two becoming one, and creating a soul that is an amalgamation as a manifestation of that unity. The balance even in the vessel of the child between the attributes that belong to the mother and the attributes that belong to the father, dissolving separation, dissolving lines of distinction and delineation between mother and father, male and female, and creating this amalgamation as this unique soul, this unique vessel. That is the unity and equality of both. And so the manifestations of the consequences of action and speech through blood, through the intimate fluids, and through the skin. This is the realm in Yesod where the dangers of disunification and also the healing power of unification are played out. Skin is something that is shared. When you are two becoming one, you are sharing blood, biology, chemistry. You're sharing blood, sweat, and tears, skin, flesh. The meeting of these two bodies, the dissolving of those boundaries with righteous intention, creating that vessel for the highest level of soul to come down and manifest. Thus again, this portion, Tazria, beginning with the woman emitting seed, this spark, this force of creation, and creating the vessel that will be the man-child. So with the intention of rectifying Yesod, you establish boundaries of holiness while simultaneously dissolving boundaries of ego. I was going to put the text back on the screen. Hmm. Hang on one moment. So one of the more nuanced distinctions to be made, even as we note the parallels and similarities between the ketamim and the zaraat, the stains on the garments, as a garment is an externalized expression of the soul, versus the blemishes visible on the skin. The ketamim, the stains, are more subtle because they require discovery and interpretation. They require the judgment. That's why continuously over and over again in these past Mishnayot, we continue to see when it says her timing is exact, it is really saying her judgment. Daya, the deen. So her judgment of discovering the blood, seeing the blood, finding the blood, giving her the authority to declare herself and to, through utterance of speech, manifest that reality of Niddah. Because it is the time of the discovery of blood that marks one Niddah. So the blood stains are hidden until found, requiring the woman to see herself and to interpret it and its origin. Because even as we saw in this Mishnah, we were able to see that one passage even says, even if the entire bed sheet were filled with blood, if it is not her time, we're talking about the virgin, if it is not her time to emerge into that level of maturity, to embody the dinim as that vessel of blood, remember it described her even as a jug of water or a jug of blood, a vessel of blood. Which brings to mind a song by Bjork. I just thought about it. She had a song where she says, I'm a vessel of blood in the shape of a girl. I'm a fountain of blood in the shape of a girl. But anyway, but there's a distinction between the zara'at that is visible on the skin and is diagnosed by the Kohanim. Remember, the Kohanim, of their purity, of the level of their interpretation, they are the ones of the purity of that Torah Aleph mindset, that Torah Aleph consciousness, to be able to rightfully diagnose where the rupture was. And this also even brings to mind the ancient traditions, even of midwifery, the birth assistants, the women as divine elders with their spiritual initiation. Remember, being a midwife was a position of priesthood traditionally. It wasn't just this medicalized, oh, somebody got a license from the hospital to work under this OBGYN to help deliver this baby. It was a spiritual calling. It was a level of priesthood because the midwives, the original doulas, they had to have that spirituality to literally look at the baby and see any birthmarks, any marks that were on the skin, or even in the placenta, even in the afterbirth or the caul covering the face of the child during birth, even any blemishes that may have been seen in the umbilical cord itself. All of these were significant markers that could reveal the child's destiny and the realm from which that soul descended, and even which ancestor that child returned as, and how they may have died in a previous life to diagnose the tikkun, the rectification for this life. The marks, the stains, the blemishes, the birthmarks. These were important to see, to call out, to name, to define as one passed from one dimension to the next. Unfortunately, these arts are not so common these days. But Bezrat Hashem, we will do the work to restore these ways. But just like the midwives I just spoke of, that level of priesthood in the women's world, we know the Kohanim were able to likewise diagnose what were the past blemishes, not only in this life, but even the past life. What ancestor is this returned that did something that now needs to be rectified, that is now made manifest or revealed through the state of what is visible on his skin? What denim is here to be rectified? And so the Zara'at is not an affliction that should be seen as a punishment. It's actually a blessed opportunity for rectification, because rectification of an individual is never about the individual. It's about an entire lineage, an entire bloodline, lifetimes upon lifetimes, past, present, and future, divine simultaneity, and about the community at large. So once that deen becomes visible, it requires that mediation of the Kohanim through their discernment and their chesed, the chesed that sweetens the gevurot. So speech being another garment of the soul, when there's corrupted speech, the garment is corrupted. The stains of judgment are visible on the garment. And we know, even for women, young girls who may have experienced, I think in this modern society where we did not have the proper boundaries and practices of Niddah enforced, many young ladies have experienced, going to school, or even, women going into the workplace, and you may have the misfortune of having a stain visible on your garment. And we know there's a particular visceral type of shame that can come from that, and a shaming by those who do not understand and do not respect the sacredness of Niddah. And this can also be a part of your reputation. Unfortunately, we all have stories. There's always that one, even well into adulthood, you'll still hear somebody talking about, remember that one girl in ninth grade? And it follows them for the rest of their life in one way or another. And this is likened to the corrupted speech, the Lashon Hara, that creates the corrupt stains on the garment of the soul. The corrupted legacy, the corrupted reputation. Your reputation, again, being your garment. That mantle ascribed to you by the community, the society around you. And when the Zara'at is identified by the Kohanim and the party is cast out, or even temporarily cast aside in quarantine, they become like the Niddah, set apart in a separate space of purification, which is what Niddah is. Niddah separation. It's not a curse. It's not a punishment. It's not, oh, you so disgusting, go sit down over there somewhere. It's a sacred place of rectification and purification, necessary for strengthening and repairing the vessel and sweetening the vessel of Denise. So we must remember that one's inner state is reflected in the externalized states of the soul, the skin, the garment, the house, the walls of the house. Again, representing your soul, your garment, as in your reputation, the legacy that you wear, that you carry of your ancestors' lineage, and the house as the community at large, your tribe, your nation. So the localized dinim is the trace left. I'm sorry, the localized dinim is the blood that is contained in that womb space. And when it expands outward and begins to touch the larger environment, the larger community, that is when the stains become visible on the garments and on the house, manifesting the fullness of that revealed affliction so that it can be diagnosed. The traces, the stains become signs that are the revelation of judgments that were concealed, perhaps for lifetimes, perhaps through multiple births and rebirths, multiple shatterings of the vessels. Because remember, last week for Parsha Shemini, we also talked about death as the experience of the shattering of the vessel of the body. When the body would expire because the vessel did not have enough of that vital force, that charge, that spark, or perhaps had too much and it could not contain it due to the limitations of egoic duality. So death occurs as a shattering of the vessel that then has to be refortified, reshaped, repaired, restored, and sweetened again as a new vessel, a new body, a new lifetime. Whether a new baby, a new ancestor returns, and through that new vessel, it's the stains or the marks on the vessel that reveal the nature and necessity of the rectification. And thus, the individual becomes an embodiment of a greater tikkun for the entire community. And then the nega we talked about earlier, the nega, the darkness surrounding the wound that marks the wound and its potential for healing and rectification, then becomes that oneg, that delight, that elevated divine flow restored, that Gan Eden, that Shabbat of unification. So we know the skin is interesting as a levush, as a garment of the soul, because the original garments of Adam and Chava were garments of light, or with the aleph, which then became skin with the ayin. So we also know, especially as melanated people, our skin, when it is healthy, it is radiant, it shines, it glows, it's beautiful. You can feel, you can sense light, heat, power, force, koach radiating through the skin. There's even a measurable, quantifiable scientific reality of what they call black body radiation, 300 degrees Kelvin, a unique heat, a unique charge, a power that melanin gives off. This is why we always joke it be so hot when black folk get together in the same room. This is what that koach is, that hashmal, that electricity rippling between the skin, that or Ein Sof. But it can only be the or of or Ein Sof when we are that limitlessness of Ein Sof, that oneness with no boundaries. Then we have no more boundaries of skin as flesh, because we all dissolve into light as light. Because remember what I explained before from the Ben Ish Chai in Datum Tebuna. That which is closest to Ein Sof is the most light, the most ephemeral. It has no form, no shape, like powdered gold, just floating around. Because shape, form is automatically a boundary. This thing becomes distinct from this thing. This thing becomes something distinct from this thing. Two separate things. A form, something that is formed and named, becomes an other. And there's automatically a separation. But the lighter something is, the more ephemeral. That thing that has no form, that is unity consciousness. That is oneness. That is limitlessness. The more material, gross, condensed, dense something is, the further away it is from Ein Sof and or Ein Sof. And remember, when we say or Ein Sof, we're talking about black light, black mother, black matter, black light, the or Haganus, the light that is so bright, so radiant, so splendorous, it can't even be perceived but by those of that ephemeral lightness. And thus, to those who are more dense, more material, it looks like koshek, darkness. Because in the dark, all is one. There's no boundaries. There's no distinctions. There's no forms. There's no separations in the dark. It is light that makes separation. That's why choshek is chokhmah and or is bina. But it takes the vessels that have both in the proper balance, that are the vessels that are rectified, sweetened, and perfumed. The vessels closest to where there is no more distinguishing between pure and impure, light and dark. No more supremacy, no more oppression by the supremacy of white over black, or light over dark, or masculine over feminine. Because there's only oneness. No distinctions, no separations. So in that healing, that healed state, that beautiful skin becomes light, especially that beautiful black skin that shines with that Or Haganus, the true light. So I believe we will end here so that everyone can enjoy their evening, as this one was a late one. But I thank you all for your time, and thank you all who are on the YouTube, and to those who will be watching the replay. You are appreciated. So shalom, shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen. Toda Rabbah. Nasi Gabina, thank you for coming. Toda Rabbah. Rabbinit Yocheved. Toda Rabbah. Rabbi Ariel. I didn't see you come in. Toda Rabbah. Rabbinit Shula. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Baruch Hashem. Shavua Tov, everyone.